The Prehistory of Transylvania describes what can be learned about the region known as Transylvania through archaeology, anthropology, comparative linguistics and other allied sciences. Transylvania proper is a plateau or tableland in northwest-central Romania. It is bounded and defined by the Carpathian Mountains to the east and south, and the Apuseni Mountains to the west. As a diverse and relatively protected region, the area has always been rich in wildlife, and remains one of the more ecologically diverse areas in Europe. The mountains contain a large number of caves, which attracted both human and animal residents. The Mousterian, the Cave of Bears, was home to a large number of cave bears whose remains were discovered when the cave was found by humans in 1975. Other caves in the area sheltered early humans. Prehistory is the longest period in the history of mankind, developing from times when the writing was still unknown. Chronologically, it stretches from the Paleolithic, Neolithic, and Bronze Age to the Iron Age. Paleolithic. The Paleolithic Epoch, the oldest and longest period in the history of mankind, is divided by specialists into three stages of development: Lower Paleolithic, Middle Paleolithic and Upper Paleolithic. The chronological frame of the Paleolithic coincides with that of the Pleistocene, and is marked by four great glaciations, as established in the Alps. While an ever-increasing amount of data has become available on the evolution of the climate, fauna and vegetation of present-day Romania, there is very little in the fossil record to give researchers an idea of what Paleolithic man in Romania looked like. To date, no human skeletal remains dating from the Low Paleolithic have been found, while the only Middle Paleolithic remains that have been discovered were a number of phalanges unearthed by M. Rosca in the Bordeaux cave at Oarbopono. A skull capsule discovered by Rosca in the Clovina cave displays features attributed to Homo sapiens sapiens, and dates back to the Upper Paleolithic as indicated by three flint objects peculiar to the Aurignacian discovered next to them. Likewise, in the Cerulmare cave in the Padurea-Craiului Mountains, speleologists have discovered some distinctively male, female and child footprints. An anthropological analysis has identified Cro-Magnon and even Neanderthal characteristics in these footprints. The economy of the Paleolithic communities consisted mainly of exploiting natural resources. Gathering, fishing and especially hunting were the main pursuits of the diverse human groups. As early as the Lower Paleolithic, human groups either hunted or trapped game. We can assume that in Transylvania, alongside mammoths, deer, horses were a fairly important food source. If our dating of the painting on the ceiling of the cave at Cusulit is correct, the Lower Paleolithic in Transylvania, because data are scarce, is largely a mystery. If the discovery of an Aeculian lithic item at Capasumic and of several pre-Mousterian lithic items at Talmasu are a certain fact, the precise stratigraphic position remains to be established. The same cannot be said about the discoveries in the Ciuclui basin at San Dominic, where several tools and her rich fauna have been encountered in certified stratigraphic positions, belonging to the geochronological interval covering the late Mindel to the early rises. The Middle Paleolithic, Mousterian, covers a time period much shorter than that of the prior epoch. It is a period set largely in early Upper Pleistocene, and corresponds within the Alpine glacial chronology to the interval covering the late rises WURM into glacial, or rather the lower WURM, through middle WURM, as indicated by the dating of the late Mousterian dwellings in the Gurasheri cave, Rasnov, and the Spurkater cave, Nandru. The Mousterian period is closest to the Alpine Paleolithic. Both periods were characterized by the presence of numerous quartzite slivers and chips, with the bones of hunted game outnumbering the tools. Consequently, specialists consider this Mousterian to be an Eastern Charentian. Likewise, northwestern and northern Transylvania with the settlements at Boisti and Remetia have revealed several typically Mousterian tools, some of which have been associated with the latest stage of the Mousterian, or even with a transition stage to the Upper Paleolithic. At the onset of the Aurignacian culture of the Upper Paleolithic, the process of regional diversification among cultures was accelerated in the Upper Paleolithic through the Middle to Upper WURM. The beginnings of the Upper Paleolithic on the territory of Romania is dated somewhere between 32,000 30th-0013,000 BP, corresponding paleoclimatically to the onset of the RC Oscillation, and is marked by the development of the two great civilizations, the Aurignacian and the Gravettian, both featuring several stages of development as established by stratigraphy. The onset of the Aurignacian culture seems to have paralleled the late Mousterian phases in the Carpathian caves, if we accept as valid the C14 dating of level IIB in the cave of Gurasheri, Rasnov. Northwestern Transylvania is the site where layers of the Middle Aurignacian culture have been identified, as signaled by the presence of blade scrapers, refitted core burins. In Banat, the settlements of Tinkova, Kosova and Romania.It Dumbrovita have produced flint tools demonstrating that the Aurignacian in this area evolved closely with that in Central Europe. Aurignacian items were also found in the caves in the Western Carpathians, the most famous of which is the Clovina cave, the site, around the start of the 20th century, of the first Paleolithic discoveries in Transylvania. The Eastern Gravettian had a long evolution, featuring several stages of development as documented especially by the settlements in Moldova. The Gravettian has left traces in the Ara Oslui and Ara Maramuoslui, the sites of microlite fashioned mainly out of obsidian, indicating the connection with the Gravettian in the neighboring regions. The late Gravettian covers Banat too, particularly the area of the Portal de Fier of the Danube, where heads identical to the Laugiri Basse-type heads were discovered in grottos and open-air dwellings. Still in Banat, a culture with several stages of development was identified and subsequently named the Quartzite Upper Paleolithic by its discoverer, considered to be synchronous with the local Aurignacian, later the Gravettian, and regarded as a prolongation of the late stages of the Mousterian with quartz and quartzite tools. Upper Paleolithic. The populations evolving at the onset of the Bowling Oscillation and which have continued to the end of the Pre-Boreal have been generally attributed to the Upper Paleolithic. Consequently, this historical period could be associated with the interval between 13,000 and about 9,500–9,000 BP. These communities continued the lifestyles of the Upper Paleolithic, due to numerous factors, including changes in the climate. The small groups of hunters-fishermen-gatherers innovated tool-in weapon types, producing, for instance, microlights, while also keeping the traditional tool types. The area of Portal de Fier is settled by a population attributed to the late Epigravettian and Mediterranean Tardigravettian. The first stage of this period has been made known to us by the discoveries in the Clemente II cave, and the second stage, by discoveries in the shelter under the rocks at Quina Turcului Dubova, both of which are located in the same limestone massif, Cremare. The two dwelling levels at Quina Turcului have produced a large quantity of tools and weapons made of flint in particular, and less so of obsidian. bone and horn, as well as body ornaments. The ornaments are often decorated with incised geometrical patterns. The most remarkable is a drilled horse phalange, wholly ornamented and probably representing a female figure. Besides the mammal, bird and fish remnants, fragments of human skeletons were also found. The Clemente II cave has produced a human skeleton set in a crouching position and covered by a thick layer of red ochre, which is attributed to the Tardigrade dwelling and which predates level 1 at Quina Turcului. The discoveries in the Klishura area display striking similarities to the industries of the Italian peninsula. The expression of the migrant human bearers of the late Epigravettian in the mentioned area, Mesolithic. Specialist opinions fix the beginning of the Mesolithic era at the end of the pre-boreal, its development throughout the boreal, and its end as late as the beginnings of the Atlantic. Chronologically then, it can be set between 9500–9000 and 7500 BP. Two cultures are documented on the territory of Romania in this time period, the Tardenoisian and the Shelly-Cladova types. The Tardenoisian spread in several of the country's regions, including the mountainous area of Transylvania in the southeast and northwest. In the settlement of Siemeshti, besides the typically Central and East European Tardenoisian microlithis tools made of flint and obsidian, some artifacts were found in the form of circular segments and two triangular ones, in addition to trapezes. The fauna remnants indicate the presence of wild boar and deer. Some specialists do not exclude the possibility of identifying the late Tardenoisian communities of the northwestern Pontica Central European types as being in the process of Neolithization, albeit incomplete, that is, displaying an incipient productive economy, whose foundations were laid by animal domestication and plant cultures. The Shelly-Cladova culture is known through the 9 open-air settlements in the proximity of the Danube. The lithic utensils come in numerous atypical forms and are fashioned of quartzite and silicious sandstone, while an additional small number are made of flint. The horn tools apparently indicate the debut of plant cultivation. Some of the larger river rocks flattened by water, some of the thicker slabs might have served for grinding. The examination of the fauna indicates an economy based mainly on hunting. The targeted game were deer, roebucks, European bisons, wild boars, hares, wild donkeys, foxes, etc. Furthermore, it would seem that the representatives of this culture domesticated the dog. Anthropological data are quite consistent. The physical type was evaluated as Oriental Cro-Magnon. The skeletons of the deceased were laid in rectangular holes, some dug in the floor of the dwelling itself. Part of them was laid in a crouching position, part was laid on the back, together with some of the personal belongings. Child mortality was high, while the average life expectancy for adults was 36.2 years. The discovery of some skeletons with arrowhead marks speaks of violent death. Research so far has proved that this culture does not have its roots in the Mediterranean-type Tardigrade, but rather originated by some new migration into the Portal de Fer region. In addition, it would seem that on the arrival of the first bearers of the Neolithic civilization, the Shelly-Cladova culture had already come to an end.